I'm live
Hi.
too. Hello.
Yes, we're live.
Yes.
So we're live on YouTube. So we'll just wait for some participants to join, and then I will start by thanking everyone for joining us. And yeah.
Let's see, how's that?
Right. Already got
I
some
think-
people. So
Yes.
hi everyone, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Bunhead, for being with us, Dr. Tom Pringle. And this is our fourth interview of the Connecting the Young World Fair interview series. And today, as I said, we're honored to have Dr. Bunhead with us, a world-renowned science communicator and a pioneer in performance science shows and public entertainment. Basically, he's real-life proof that science can be as interesting and funny as a performative show. So Dr. Bunhead first studied chemistry in the universities of Bath and Liverpool, and then spent some years doing research at the University of Edinburgh, after which he started doing scientific research and his now famous scientific performances, bridging the gap between science education and popular entertainment. He's started theaters and science festivals around the world, took part in television programs, and even got in the Guinness World Book of Records. And now he's joining us at the Connecting the Young World Fair interview series. Thank you so much for your time and your presence here. And
Very well.
we're ready to
start. Be here.
Well, thank you so much. And our first question is, how did you get involved into science communication?
How did I what? Sorry.
Sorry, I think the connection is failing. How did you get involved into science communication?
Oh, okay. When I started, it wasn't a thing. There was no such thing as science communication when I started. And there was a big pressure politically for scientists to engage more with the general publics with science. So this idea was put out that universities would start to bring science a little more to ordinary people in the street, as it were. And one interesting thing was there was a lot of resistance to even the word science or the two words science communication together. And I remember having heated debates with physics lecturers saying, this isn't even a thing. You shouldn't be allowed to use it. Stop calling it science communication. It's terrible. You're undermining science. So when I got into it, I encountered a lot of resistance in some corners and a huge amount of support in others. We had a fantastic who latterly professor of chemistry, Professor Leslie Yellowlees, and she went on to become the president of the Royal Society of Chemistry for a while, really passionate about science and crossing boundaries between the ivory towers of university and bringing it to everyday folk. And so she was massively supportive when I said, can I go and do some science shows at a local school? And a friend, actually my flatmate, had said, look, I have to do science for primary school kids. I don't know what to do with them. And I said, well, I don't know what to do with them. And but they had this event at university called Sci-Fun, where they were putting on little science shows. And it was an opportunity to earn money as a rather poor postgraduate doing a PhD research. So I thought, oh, well, it's a great way to earn money. And when I did it, I realized I loved it. As soon as I saw someone up on stage handling all these bits of science equipment and performing, I just thought, I can do that. I want to do that. So I went up there and I was quite competitive. So I thought, I'm going to be better than them. So I studied very hard the people I admired, and I used what they did and I developed it. And bit by bit, I started to be doing more of that and less being in the lab doing research. So I sort of morphed into a science communicator rather by accident and a whole series of stepping stones, because there was no science communication, there was no training, there was nothing. So I just made a lot of mistakes, My career is a career of mistakes and passionate, enthusiastic, throwing myself into things and then doing them better the next time. So in the way scientists go about developing a new field, I very much felt I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to do it. So I did it and I did it wrong, and I learned from that and I did it again. And then I started to realize what I was missing. And so I went and gained training in the areas that I was missing. So I trained in theatre, in puppetry, in physical theatre, and a bunch of other things to slowly enrich what I was doing in a stage environment.
Incredible. And well, you're a chemist by formation. How do your interests, academic interests in the first place, got related to the kind of stuff and the kind of science that you were communicating?
Sometimes it's hard, and that's one of the things that's important for people who are researchers. It can be really difficult to take these abstract areas, especially if you're working in blue sky research, or you're doing mathematical proofs, or you're studying some minute mechanism of mitochondrial activity, these sort of things. There's a lot of acronyms and jargon. And so one of the first challenges I had before I'd officially become a science communicator was I was involved in a project which went to a remote island in Scotland to take science research to school children, secondary school children, and try and inspire them. It's called the Pupil Researcher Initiative. So I was trying to explain why I was doing, trying to create these novel materials, these absorbents that would take certain gases out of gas mixes, remove them for industrial feeds. And it was very challenging because it's not interesting to them per se. So it's a lot about finding the hooks that relate to the audience. So through doing things like that, I began to see more and more the hooks of what I was doing, and how if I tried different things, it would attract a different attention from different audiences, different ages. And then I started working with other people in their research to do the same thing. So it's always been really interesting to me to see how we can find a hook to what a person's doing, to connect it to someone who has no understanding or interest.
Wow, so I think that's so complex and complicated, and we would like to know also, like, about this kind of stuff. What is like the most regarding thing you like? Like, I mean, what do you love the most about science communication, and to what is the specific group you like the most?
So the thing I like most about science communication is the communication. It's the being with people and sharing ideas and understanding and enthusiasm and passion. It's the humanity of it. As I went on, I realized I've been influenced by a lot of things. I studied to teach secondary education, and so I came into contact with some great educational thinkers, people like Carl Rogers, who is very much about this idea of facilitation and student-centered learning and putting the learner at the center of the experience and things like this. And then you've got Benjamin Bloom, who talked about this idea of domains of learning. So we have the cognitive domain, which we work on very much when we get to an academic level. It's all through the head. We effectively become brains on sticks. And as Ken Robinson says, our bodies become devices to move our brains around. But primarily, we developed our brains, that part of our thinking abilities, so much later in our evolution. And we're fundamentally dancers and singers and poets and storytellers. This is what we are at our deepest level. And this is what we relate to at our deepest level. And this is where our greatest traditions are. You look in the Indian traditions of I always pronounce it wrong, but the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and things like this. And all around the world, you find these great traditions of storytelling where the most important things are conveyed through narratives, through songs, through rhymes. We teach children through rhymes. So all of these things are what make us human. So I'm interested, if you like, in the head, but also the heart and the hands, the feeling and the doing. So for me, the science communication is all about the whole person. How do you communicate with the entirety of the person? So when I see you smile, I feel a connection. And to me, that's where it starts. If I don't have that, if I don't have rapport, if I don't have connection, it doesn't matter how clever my explanation is. It doesn't matter how brilliant my words are. You just won't trust me. You won't hear it. So we have to connect first as humans. We have to feel rapport. We have to like the person in front of us. And if we can't do that, we can't communicate science. All we can do is put words in front of a person which they'll reject.
I totally agree. Thank you so much. And regarding all of your experience in communicating to so many different publics, we saw on your website that you have presented more than 1,800 events in many different countries and situations. So what we would really like to ask you is, what are your favorite audiences? What was your favorite performance ever, and what was the audience that inspired you the most? Was the most presenter?
It's funny, it changes as time goes on. When I began, it was audiences that laughed. When audiences laughed, it told me that I was connecting. It reassured me that I was connecting. And so I was working hard to get these very obvious signs of engagement. And I was afraid of silence. I was afraid of silence in an audience. But as I'd study audience in the way I would previously have studied chemical reactions, I started to study the nature of silence in the audience, and it became fascinating to me that there were different silences. There was the silence of disengagement and boredom. There was the silence of contemplation. There's the silence of being challenged. There's the silence of being in awe. And so these different silences become really pleasing for me to try and find a way to evoke. And so I would look at experiments and demonstrations and see what they do to the audience. And when you get this sort of slight breath in of, and that for me was really beautiful, because I knew something very profound was going on there. We may have some cognitive dissonance or some moment of understanding, which is very hard to get. It's really important to understand in science communication, we have a very limited window to communicate anything. So most of what we do is actually on an emotional level. You can't really, I'm of the belief we don't teach anyone anything. We provide an environment in which they can learn if they want to. And part of them wanting to is the way in which we deliver it. But they do the learning. They formulate their understanding, and they break their old model and they form a new model. And it's a difficult process. It involves work. And that takes a long time. It just builds and builds and builds. Then suddenly it's like it crystallizes and they have this clearer view. But there's a long time where the view is messy and people don't really understand things properly. So it's important as science communicators not to think that we can go in there and teach really solid ideas in one 15, 20, 60-minute session. I've digressed a bit, but I've digressed so hard, I've forgotten where we were starting to go. My apologies. That's poor science communication, that is. Which is good, because you can see that even I can, after all these years, it's still very easy to lose track of what we're trying to do because we have so much we want to say. When we're scientists, we're passionate about all this stuff we know, and we want to share it all. And one of the skills in science communication is also being prepared to have these little things we know we're going to say and no more. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, but that's actually a great thing that you presented us, and honestly, I think everyone at home will have a great opportunity to think and to absorb all that you've said now, because it's something that's very deep, and thank you for saying that.
And also, I think that taking into account like the complexity of science communication, something that has like come in our minds that for a long time scientists have always avoided to communicate science while they are doing, and those who did or dedicated themselves to science communication, just like you, were a bit side-looked. So, what's your perception regarding nowadays science attitudes regarding science communication? What we were talking at the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the really famous science communicators, there's someone like Professor Julius Sumner Miller, who is a physicist from Australia, and he wanted to take the science out of the laboratory and put it on television. And he became hugely successful doing it, and he was wildly passionate. And in fact, I used some of his video to demonstrate the massive improvement in science communication, because what he was trying to do, he was in the stage where he wasn't hiding behind his desk anymore. He'd emerged, he'd come forward, and he was trying really hard to be passionate and to be emotionally engaging, but he overdid it. And he was so passionate, and he would say things like, the pressure of the air, staggering in its consequences for humanity. And it was really dramatic, and they'd have the music at the beginning where, da, 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 experiments in physics. And it was just hugely overbaked. But he was really onto something. And so what's happened is, through him, other people have seen him and been inspired and said, I can do that, and I'm going to do it better. So when I started, as I said, there wasn't science communication. It was just a new word. There was a lot of resistance. I was invited to Edinburgh University in, I think, 1998 to talk on science communication. And some chemists came along, and I stood, talked for an hour and a half about it, and everyone nodded their head and went, oh, yes, that's obvious. In the same way that woodwork is obvious. You know, you just say you cut this angle and you sand it down and you make a lovely shelf and it's beautiful. The skill is in the 20 years it takes you to develop the craft, not the basic understanding. So the craft of science communication has layer after layer built on what's gone before. And so now, when I started, I was inviting people and challenging people to use puppetry, to use storytelling, to pretend to make mock TV advertisements, to be playful, basically. Playful. So important. We are so serious, especially as scientists. Science is this godlike status. We make it dull. But if we find the play, we break those barriers. It doesn't mean we disrespect it. It doesn't mean we get the facts wrong. It means we develop the freedom to try things that we wouldn't otherwise do, and we're supportive around each other. So I was always a very playful person in what I did. And I've noticed that the creativity has really blossomed. I'm not saying this is any of my doing. This has just been waves and waves of something that's been emerging. And so each new layer of undergraduates that gets involved in a science fair and then becomes a postgraduate and then decides, you know, I'd like to do this. And now there are courses, there's master courses, there's PhD courses. So there's so much on the internet. The quality is brilliant. The quality, I look at stuff and I think, I don't need to do anything anymore. There's so much brilliant stuff. And I've always been interested in what isn't being done. So a lot of what I started doing is just being done really well and far better than when I was doing it. So I'm very encouraged by what's happening. There are other sides to it which are difficult, but you know, we can talk about that. But on the whole, I've just seen an incredible improvement in the quality and understanding of what science communication is, both from a performative side and also from the analysis, which comes mostly from the social sciences. And there's pros and cons to what's happening between the practical science communicators and the, if you like, academic people who study science communication. And these are two different processes and two different phenomena, if you like.
Yeah, precisely. And in fact, one of the reasons why we're doing this Connecting the Young World Fair sort of forum is precisely to democratize science, and obviously through science communication. So what I would like to ask you now is, considering that science communication is becoming much more available and much more valued, to say so, what do you think that your style and the kind of style of science communication you see around you helps in democratizing science among the general public and even among the scientists themselves to accept more the idea of communicating it to?
It's familiarity, it's accessibility, it's personality, it's humanity. It's what makes us human. Science is seen as this little box of inaccessible facts and genius, and it's over there. It's not something here. Science is here. Science lives with us every day, and more so today than in many years because of COVID. You know, there's so much great work that these, especially there's particular areas in science communication. For example, the infographic. It's been a tremendously powerful tool in helping people untangle some of their misunderstandings about the way in which viruses work and why we're using face masks, why we wash our hands, why we're keeping a social distance, why, in spite of the pain of separation, social separation, we need to do these things. There are complex things, exponential growth, the way in which a virus goes 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, it raises to the power of 2, so that you get this hockey stick growth, which goes, look, there's nothing happening. Why are we, oh my God, it's too late. You know, we've all been wiped out. And this understanding of these complexities is really vital for people who are voting, people who are being asked to make sacrifices. So I think more than anything, the democratization of science has to happen now, and this is the perfect time. The science communicators out there listening to this, really, it's such a brilliant opportunity for you to use all your understanding of science to help people understand why we're doing these things and to get a unpanicked. We're panicking. Humanity is panicking. We're scared. We're worried about what's happening. We're confused. And being better informed helps us make better decisions in a calmer, more reflective way. So it's not reactive all the time. It's not seen as a threat to us. We understand. So yes, this democratization, and the way in which we do it is by making it, not turning people into Dr. Bunhead. The science communicators need to become themselves. They're not robots. They're not these machines that deliver knowledge. They're human beings. So I go back to what I said before. The democratization comes from the shared humanity, the you and me and other people just talking together as equals in dialogue in all of these areas where we are more. I give you an example in Brazilian culture. A friend is Brazilian. He says when they have a problem, they come together and they talk around a fire. So they meet, the elders meet, and they discuss this problem, but they call the fire the children's fire, because when they have their discussion, they're not thinking about this, they're thinking about how does this go on into the future and affect our children. So there's this sense that we're one global family, one global village, one interconnected web of relatives. And we need to connect. We need more togetherness. We need more connection. So this word democratization is really, really important. This feeling that we're all involved in it. And this is one way of doing it, is the way I do it. It's very playful, but I'm not saying this is the way. I'm saying this is me. I'm playful. I like to play. Other people have other qualities, and it's for them to find themselves as a means to deliver what it is they're passionate about.
I think the last thing you said is really important, and for us, at least, like many of the people that are on our audience, and even both of us are like educating ourselves for being science communicators in the future, and we are from different nationalities, different countries, different contexts, but all of us have like the same idea of democratizing and communicating science. But there are many future science communicators around the world that are not sure about how to get involved with this kind of activities. So my question is, what would you recommend to future science communicators to start their path into this area of science?
I would say communicate. That's it. Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about getting a science communication job. Don't worry about what you're doing. Just talk about what you do, or draw what you do, or sing what you do, or dance what you do. But do it more. Be passionate. Allow your passion to shine forth. Many people, myself included, become accidental science communicators. I didn't intend to become a science communicator. In fact, my brother pointed out to me that I was doing this before I even realized, because the first job I had, I was 13 years old, and I had a paper round. We delivered the newspapers to houses, and I earned £2 a week, which was like, I don't know, like $2.50 US. It's not a huge amount by today's standards, but I remember being massively excited, and I didn't, it's like, what can I do with this huge amount of money? So I went and bought something which is hard to get now in the UK, and it's indoor fireworks. They're just these tiny little fireworks. It's chemistry in a box, a tiny box of little pharaoh serpents and sparkles and colors and smoke and flashing light things and fire. And I got my brother, my sister, my mum, the neighbors, kids come around, and I put it all on a table, and I performed my first science show. And I didn't realize, I just loved it. I loved the colors and the smell and the drama, and I loved them going, oh, why is that happening? And I said, well, that's because of this and this. I didn't know it. And so I was accidentally, that aspect of me was coming out. And everyone out there listening to this who is interested in science communication, I would say, don't worry about what other people are doing. If you love your science, just chat about it. Just talk to your friends about it, talk to your parents, your brother and your sister. And when you see an opportunity, take it. I started going into schools, and I did it for free. I didn't get paid. I just worked for free. And then one day the head teacher saw me and said, oh, will you come back? And I said, yeah. And he said, how much do you charge? And I'm like, well, I don't. He said, oh, we have to pay you something. And then it became a thing. People started saying, well, we have to pay you. How much do you want? And I sort of bit my lip and quoted a figure, and the teacher just went, oh, fine, okay. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm earning all this money. And so bit by bit, it emerged. So I'm a big believer in organic growth. You can do courses, and there's some fantastic courses there. But I would caution, if you do a course and say it's very strong in journalism, science communication journalism, you might not be a journalist. It might not be what you're good at. You might love being on stage. That might be what, or vice versa. You might hate being in front of audiences, but you love writing, and you can take your time. You can conjure up really beautiful metaphors. That might be your thing. So it's find your thing that enables you to share the joy that you have, because you have joy about science, because that's what drives you, because science is hard. You had to put in hard work to become a scientist, and something drove you. And there's kind of this passion in us, this curiosity, this fulfillment. So where does that come from for you? How do you get that? And that's when I run training courses, that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm trying to give people the opportunities to find what makes them shine. My job isn't to say yes or no, you can't be a science communicator. My job is just to give them the opportunity to find the things that work for them and help them improve the things that are holding them back. So that's what I have to say at the moment on that. Just do what you feel.
Well, this question might be, are you to doing science?
Sorry, you've just gone quiet there. Can you say that again? I can't hear anything at the moment. I don't know if I've touched something, but oh, you're back again. I can hear you, Muncie.
I think Rafa is free, but I can repeat his question. His question was, what, like, in all your history, like regarding science communication, what have you ever, of course you have inspired someone, but have inspired someone that specifically like changed his life in this kind of area of science communication, to change like his perspective, his or her perspective, and how did it went?
So it's happened a few times, and it makes you realize you're getting older. The first time it happened, I was performing a show at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, which is the world's largest celebration of arts. There's something like 3,000 shows come to Edinburgh from all over the world. And I performed the show, and someone who was 19 years old came up to me and said, "Oh my God, it's so great to meet you. I came to see you when I was 8 years old, and you made me want to become a scientist, and now I'm doing my degree in chemistry." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so happy. I'm so happy." And then a while later, someone said to me, "I've started my PhD, and I started because I saw you, and I just thought science is brilliant. I want to do science." And then a few years later, someone came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I've just got my own research group. I have PhDs working for me now, and I saw you 20 years ago, and I've always loved science because of this." And so I see these things, and it makes me, it's enormously rewarding. It's sort of like emotionally rewarding when people say things like this. I don't do it for that reason. I do it because I love it, and I love seeing people being changed. But you never know what's going to happen, if they're just going to be incited. But when a person comes and says, "This has happened, I am now with my own research group," or "I am a science communicator," and I have many letters and things from people who send these. It's the greatest reward. It's unexpected, but it's it's hugely. I just feel very blessed in that regard to have been able to do something, because when I was a young person, I did not know what I wanted to do. I never knew what I wanted to do. All I knew was what I didn't want to do, and what I didn't want to do was every single job I saw. When I was trying to do my PhD, I would look in the New Scientist to try and find a job, and I'd look at them and try and convince myself, yes, I want to become a research analyst. Yes, and I didn't. My heart sank every time. I was trying to convince myself I want to do this. And then, quite by accident, I saw a piece of amazing science communication by an Australian called Adam Salinger, who his father, I can't remember his first name, another Salinger, wrote a great book on chemistry. He's himself a great communicator of science. And he gave this brilliant talk, which was on a very boring part of physics to do with balance and gravity. And he held a group of 15-year-old kids who would otherwise be totally bored in his hands for 40 minutes. And I walked up to him and I said, "That was incredible. I've never seen anything like that. I've studied education. I teach. I love education. But what you did there was incredible." And he said, "Oh, thanks very much." And he just passed me this card, and it said, "Adam Salinger, Science Communication and Outreach." And I was 30 years old, and this light bulb just went, and I was like, "That's a job. I'm going to do that." And that was it. It was just this, that's me. That's what I'm going to do. I didn't know how, I didn't know what. It was just like my life changed in that second. I knew I was going to do that. There's a lot of going back there. So I think people inspire people. You know, Adam Salinger inspired me. Another guy called Ian Russell, who did the Exploding Custard Show. I saw him. He was going to schools and doing these science performances. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's doing this as a job. That's amazing. And so I can say to him and to Adam Salinger that they've inspired me and changed my life in the same way that these people are coming to me and saying, you know, you've changed my life and I've taken a new direction. It's a very organic thing.
Wow, really, I can't imagine even what is the feeling you gain every time you hear that all these people have inspired by you, because you have changed your lives. Like, even though you never realize like how a science show can inspire and change the life of people, and then to other people. And another question I have, like, I think it's a really personal one, but we really would like to know, like, you at the beginning told us that you made a lot of mistakes while doing like these, like in science communication. We would like to know what was your biggest mistake and how did that help you to be who you are right now?
Biggest mistake. The mistake always feels biggest when it's just happened to you. Okay, that's really important. The mistakes just cut me like a knife. They are unbearable. And the biggest mistakes, I think, not being true to myself has been something that's really been an important learning issue. When I've done things because I've been told I ought to do them, and this is good and right, and then I've done that, and then it's all gone wrong, and those things have really haunted me. There have been experiments that have gone wrong on stage, and that makes me feel sick beyond belief, because the thought that I might hurt someone, because all of these things carry a risk. I don't mind if I hurt myself, and I have done many times, but if anyone else is hurt, then it would not only be bad for me, it would be bad for the whole of science communication. So I think where maybe there have been accidents and things have gone wrong, then that has been the thing that has really made me focus. So health and safety, the safety aspect. And I used to ask myself, when I made a risk assessment for a performance, what will happen if this goes wrong? And I would write it, and I would do all I could. And risk assessments are a pain in the backside. They take so long, but they are so important. You have to do them. So it does help you spot potential things that can go wrong. So you do these things, and then something still goes wrong. And it feels so awful when things go wrong, but it just makes me so much more aware of my responsibility, not only then in what I do, but what I say, the effects of what I say to an audience, and how that, making sure that I get the things right as best I can. And to go back to that safety element, I've changed from saying what happens if this goes wrong to what happens when this goes wrong. Because when you've done the same experiment 2,000 times, it's not an experiment, it's a demonstration, but when you've done it 1,000, 2,000 times, statistically something will go wrong. So you know, anyone out there thinking about doing science demonstrations to an audience, I would say really rehearse it at home, in an environment, and in front of small groups first before you take it into a bigger audience, because it's very easy to get carried away when you're in front of the audience and want to impress them. So I'll tell you a story about something that went wrong for me that didn't hurt anyone, but it hurt me, and it made me pay more attention. And it's about performance. I was doing a show to a group of children in Scotland, and it was on an area where the kids, you know, they didn't have very much. It was a rough area, and they weren't paying much attention. And they were all like, "Oh, yeah, you know, this is rubbish," and they were messing around. So I used to do some fire eating and fire breathing. So big fireballs breathing out of my mouth. So I thought, I need to do this first to grab their attention. So I get this big thing, and I've got this raging flame, and I just read this book on fire eating, and it recommended a different fuel. Now, normally I use paraffin, which burns at a lower temperature, and if you get paraffin on your face, you cover your face and it stops burning. It's very nice. So this recommended using a different fuel, which was basically like petrol without the additives. So it's ferocious. And so I put this fuel on, and then I lit it. There's this huge blazing fire, and the kids have suddenly gone from going "Rah!" to going, and they're all paying attention. So inside I'm like, the performer comes out and goes, "Yes, I've got them." So I bring this fire into my mouth, and I'm putting it in my mouth, and the kids are just like, and so I'm like, yeah, this is brilliant. So I do it again a second time, but this time the flame front is kind of getting closer to my mouth. The fireball is growing because the vapors are heating up. So the air around is warming up. And then I think I do it a third time. That'll get them. So I go, poof, and by that time, I have a cloud of heavy flammable vapor engulfing my head, and my entire head catches on fire. So my head's on fire, And so I put the fire torch down. I've got just popped it down. It's on the grass outside, and I start to calmly cover my face. And then my eyes are closed. As I open my eyes, all I can see is orange, and I can feel my eyelashes burning and coming backwards. My eyebrows are burning. I can smell burning flesh, and I panic. I go from feeling in control to suddenly feeling that my life is threatened. And that thing where you call for your mummy, you know, when you're terrified, it's sort of like, "Ah!" I did that, you know, so I'm this grown man whose head's on fire, and I'm going, "Ah!" And the kids think it's hilarious. They think it's the funniest thing they have seen in their lives. And so I'm running about trying to put my head out. And the guy who's working there grabs me, walks me indoors, and puts my head under the tap. And as he's putting the head under the tap, bits of my skin are coming off my face, burnt up my nose, burnt in my ears, burnt. I'm just completely burnt and pumped with adrenaline, absolutely pumped. And he says, "We need to get you to hospital." And I said, no, I've got to go out. I've got to perform. The kids are waiting. I can't let them down. He says, "No, you need to go to hospital." I said, no, I've got to go out. Got to do the show. Got to do the show. He said, "Look in the mirror." And I looked in the mirror, and my face was just all burnt off on one side. I was like, "I think I need to go to hospital." And he said, "Yes." And so we got in the car, and just as we got in the car, the adrenaline started to wear off, and it felt as if someone was pressing a hot iron into my face. It was agony. The pain was excruciating all the way to the hospital. And I had like this burn all over my face it took about 6 months. I was putting aloe vera gel on it and all sorts of things. I was very lucky. It just superficially burnt my skin off. And that was very early, but it taught me something really, really important, is you must never get carried away with the performance and take steps outside of anything which you've previously rehearsed. And it's really tempting when you're desperately trying to hold an audience to take bigger risks than you've rehearsed. So all the risks that I take are based on what I've rehearsed, but I try and make it look like I've never done this before. I've got an idea. Why don't I set my head on fire? How am I going to do that? And so the kids are like, "Oh, well, let's have a look. Let's find out." Now, I've done this hundreds of times, but I'm doing it as if I've never done it. And it's like, "Oh!" And I can evoke the memories. And part of some science communicators approach, different people have different ways to adding the theatricality. But for me, I remember going, "Oh!" So I can still go, "Oh!" like that, quite convincingly in front of an audience, enough for them to feel like, "Oh my God, he's burning himself." And then I go, "Oh, phew." And they laugh with relief. It's another important technique. If you're going to build tension, you need a release. You can't go tension, tension, tension. Even Macbeth has the drunken porter scene to relieve the tension. And for young audiences especially, you can't hold them in tension. It's cruel. You need tension and release. And these are part of the theatrical elements that we add in to build all these layers that make just a science become a whole person communication event, where it's their emotions, it's their mind, it's physical, it's the whole person.
Wow, really, when I was like listening to you, I was feeling so many things. Really, I was like imagining, and without looking at you, I was like creating all these images on my mind, and I got really excited. I think all the people that are watching us feel the same way. And thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's amazing and it's so inspiring for everyone. We have another last question. Like, well, we all know that science and technology is a really important thing, like in countries' progress all around the world. But what do you think is the importance of science communication in the progress of science and technology in developing countries?
That's a really great question, because of course in the developing countries they have the most benefit from the implementation and the development of science. There's the greatest scarcity of resource. There's the whole political element as well, and finding these scientific solutions to these problems is a tremendous way forward for people, for bringing people out of situations of poverty or of dependence on others. So I think more than anything, countries that are developing have the greatest amount to benefit from science communication. And personally, I would like to see science communication develop hand in hand with scientific progress in these countries, because we need these ambassadors of science to bring to people the reason to use these things, to make these things useful and practical and beneficial to improve people's lives. And science communication is like a bridge between the science and the practical applications, and inspiring people to adopt these approaches and to have some faith in science. You know, there's a lot of work against vaccines, for example, and it's based on religious arguments and things like this. And I'm not here to denigrate anyone's religion at all, but I am here to say that we owe it to ourselves to prevent suffering and to do what we can to help relieve these problems that we have in the world that are making people's lives less fulfilling than they could be, because our lives could be so much more less stressful. Let's use the word stressful for want of a better word. There's a lot that can be done. So I'd like to see many, many more science communicators. And that doesn't mean it has to be your official job title. It doesn't mean you have to be saying, I am a science communicator. We can just be doing this as part of our everyday passion about science and sharing it with our family and our friends.
Wow, thank you so much. I think that's something that is missing all over all the developing countries, even in the non-developing countries. But I think every country is developing every time, like for being better. But yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's something that it has to be changed in the mentality of developing countries, as in Mexico, in Latin America, and all over the world. So
well, I
thank
think
you
it is
so
changing.
much.
I just want to say I am talking with you, and this, you know, this didn't happen. You know, you are the change. You literally, you want to see it change. It's here now. I'm sat looking at it, and it's very inspiring for me to be talking with you, because when I first talked about these things happening, people like yourselves did not exist. And here you are now asking, how can we bring the change? So you are the change. It's very, very delightful for me to see your youthful, passionate, enthusiastic faces and your great minds that you have, and the new ways that you will look at things, and the way you will go on to inspire things. So I'd like to say thank you, and I really wish you all the best with this fair that you have coming, and that it inspires more and more people like yourselves to carry on growing what it is that you're doing here.
Thank you so much. I think this last part was so inspiring for everyone. And yes, surely we will do, all of us, we need to do a change. It's not only our passion, but our responsibility as young scientists. And well, for like concluding this interview, we would like to know if the public has any question. They can ask it, like only one more questions on the chat of the live.
Okay.
If not, we will like start like concluding this. And thank you so much. So anyone has a question, you can write it on the chat and we will read it.
Yeah, I've been reading some of the chats there. They've been really nice ones from, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It looks like Edurn or Edurna has been making a lot of lovely comments here. So it's great. So I hope whoever Edurna is becomes a great science communicator in their own right. Yeah. And also, I just wanted to ask, this is live, but is there any chance to see a recording at some point to share it?
Of course, like when we finish this like live, you will be able to share it. We will send you the link. It is on YouTube,
Fabulous.
so it will be keep recorded.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you to you. I think nobody has questions yet, or they are really shy to do them. But okay. I think
so. That's all right.
Thank you so much for all your things you have shared to us. It's really valuable for all of us. And I think with these interviews and with all your knowledge, we are like completing our objective of democratizing science and technology. really, it was so inspiring for everyone, and really I feel so excited, so emotional with all your way of speaking, and also your humanity behind like all your science communication careers. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you. I can't say anything else.
Oh, I've got a question from Owen. Hi, Owen. Who was the scientist who inspired you the most? There was Carl Sagan, probably. Carl Sagan, the great astronomer, physicist, had a beautiful, beautiful television series which came out when I was I was probably 10 years old or so, and it was called Cosmos. And the man spoke with this beautiful honey-like voice in such poetry, with such vision and calmness and beauty. And he really embodies what I feel is the heart of a great science communicator. And another one would be David Attenborough. When you hear David Attenborough's voice, he could talk about anything, and because his passion comes through, he could talk about a plastic bag. This plastic bag has been sat in that corner for 3 weeks. And you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? He really makes us care. So for me, it was Carl Sagan, the way he spoke, the way he made the cosmos, this thing I'd never considered before, become so awe-inspiring and made me want to know more and more. And at that age, we're so hungry for knowledge. So yeah, for me, Carl Sagan. There were others as well. A guy called James Burke, who did a fantastic series called Connections, which was all about how everything connected to everything else. And he was a great storyteller. He had made narratives about, and of course, because in 1812, this had been invented. And at the same time, Joseph Priestley was having a problem with this. And you could see how there wasn't one person doing things. It was all of these people, this huge web interconnected that was feeding into itself. So we're all part of this web. And I think that's perhaps another nice little thing to connect to what you guys are doing, because you are still part of this big web. Each one of you is a node on this web of connections, which is going out and inspiring people and cross-fertilizing. And the whole thing is just growing and growing and growing. Okay, how could I leeway someone into science who isn't usually into it? That is one of my biggest questions, because I'm trying to do it with my mum for the last 25 years. And it might make you feel better to know I have very little success. So I keep trying and trying. And it's only in the accidents that it comes through. And something happened just recently, the other day, and she just said to me, well, I could say that, but what I also have to say is this as well, because it's not right just to have one idea. I need to have more than one idea and compare them with each other. That's science. And I was like, oh my God, Mum, what just happened here? And it was, so I would say just keep trying and paying attention. There isn't a rule that will work. You just keep trying different things and chipping away and seeing what works. And what works for me will be different to what works for you. But yeah, getting people who aren't into it, you're just passionate. Eventually it'll wear off on them. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Dr. Pringle, this interview and all this information was amazing, but really, I don't know how to thank you, because I think you have inspired so many people. I know Edurne will be so inspired, and all these guys that are looking at you, and all the people are going to look after this. But well, thank you so much for this. We hope, and I hope personally, to meet you one day in person, because you inspired me so much, and I am sure now that I want to dedicate my life into science communication.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much for this. And well, there are no more questions, so I think this is going to end right now. So thank you everyone for watching us, and thank you, Dr. Pringle, for this opportunity.
Very good. And I'll just say a final thank you to Ariana Diaz, who says that they're now more into science communication. So Ariana, good luck. Go out and do great things, change the world. We need you. Okay.
We have
and thank
to.
you, Nancy. Best of luck for you too. Do good
Thank you.
things.
So,
Okay,
well,
bye-bye.
goodbye to everyone. We're going to finish the live.